We've all heard the rumors. We've watched the filters slip in real time, catching moments that were never meant to be seen. But what's coming out of the cosmetic capital of the world right now goes far beyond vanity. This is no longer about looking younger or chasing perfection. According to hushed whispers from insiders, this is about survival. Sources are now claiming that Darcey Silva isn't simply concealing a botched Botox session or temporary swelling. Allegedly, she may be battling something far more serious and far more frightening: necrosis, the literal death of body tissue. Her nose isn't just changing shape. New, disturbing reports suggest that the very structure of her face could be failing. Today, we're not scrolling through Instagram for clues. We're digging deeper. We're examining claims of an alleged medical blacklist, secret emergency discussions inside TLC aimed at pulling the plug on the show to avoid legal fallout, and what some are calling the ultimate betrayal by the one person Darcey trusts above all others. This is the story of how a relentless pursuit of perfection may have spiraled into a full-blown plastic surgery nightmare. But before we unlock the medical files and expose what critics say TLC is desperate to keep hidden, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the tell-all tapes. We're the only channel willing to say what the network won't. If you want the raw, unfiltered truth about the 90-day universe, turn on your notifications now, because you do not want to miss the updates we're hearing about possible reconstruction efforts. To truly grasp the scale of this tragedy, we need to rewind. We have to confront the ghost of Darcey's past. Looking back at photos from 2010 to 2015 is almost painful. In the archives, you see a woman who was undeniably beautiful. She had a natural glow, a warmth in her smile that reached her eyes, and facial features that were distinct, ethnic, and real. This was the girl next door era. When Darcey first appeared on 90 Day Fiancé, she may have been desperate for love, but she still looked human. There was softness to her face. Her jawline was strong yet feminine. Her eyes had a unique shape, untouched by extreme lifting, and her nose fit her face in perfect balance. But beneath that natural beauty, there was something darker at play: the psychology of the twins. To understand how someone could risk necrosis and permanent disfigurement, you have to understand the dynamic between Darcey and Stacey. For 4 decades, they've reportedly been locked in a quiet but relentless competition. Insiders suggest that growing up, there was always an unspoken question: who was the prettier twin? That comparison became a toxic loop. If Stacey highlighted her hair, Darcey went blonder. If Stacey lost 5 pounds, Darcey lost 10. This wasn't harmless sisterly rivalry. It was an arms race. And somewhere around season 2 or 3 of the show, that psychological battle turned physical. Fans can pinpoint the moment it started. The beginning of the so-called pillow face era. Viewers noticed immediately. The comments changed overnight, from "I hope she finds love" to "what did she do to her face?" But instead of slowing down, the backlash seemed to fuel the fire. This is where the story slides into the dangerous territory of body dysmorphia, a tragic consequence of modern image culture. Darcey appeared to fall into a filter feedback loop, seeing herself only through Snapchat and Instagram lenses: flawless skin, erased pores, and impossible symmetry. When she looked in the mirror and saw real skin, texture, and natural asymmetry, her mind may have registered it as something broken. Experts call this perception drift, a psychological phenomenon where a person can no longer see themselves the way everyone else does. When we look at Darcey today, many see someone who has gone too far. But when Darcey looks in the mirror, she likely sees unfinished work, a face that still isn't tight enough, small enough, or snatched enough. And then came the turning point: the fox eye procedure. That was the moment her ethnic uniqueness vanished. By pulling the eyes back and lifting the brows to an extreme, she erased the signature Silva features and replaced them with a generic, manufactured Instagram template. It was tight. It was artificial. And it was a massive red flag, one that many believe ethical doctors in the US refuse to touch. That refusal leads us to the moment everything changed, the Turkey trip. This is ground zero for the medical crisis unfolding today. When American surgeons reportedly started saying no, or when revision prices in Beverly Hills soared into the stratosphere, the twins looked overseas. And while Turkey is home to many skilled surgeons, it can also be the Wild West of medical tourism if the wrong clinic is chosen. This wasn't a minor tweak. Insiders claim they signed up for what was marketed as a Barbie makeover. In reality, it was extreme physical trauma. Multiple invasive procedures performed in a single session or over a dangerously short period, veneers, rhinoplasty, lip lifts, buccal fat removal, and liposuction. Think about what that does to the human body. The stress alone is immense. But the surgery itself may not have been the most dangerous part. The real risk comes after. The recovery. The flight home. Medical guidelines exist for a reason. After a major rhinoplasty, especially a revision rhinoplasty, where scar tissue already compromises blood flow, the nose becomes incredibly vulnerable. Its blood supply relies on a delicate, fragile network that cannot afford disruption, and that's where this story takes an even darker turn: blood vessels. Every time surgeons cut into that area, they further damage an already fragile vascular system. Now imagine taking tissue that has just been brutally traumatized, tissue barely surviving on a weakened blood supply, and putting it on a 10-hour international flight. Cabin pressure shifts. Altitude triggers swelling. In a healthy person, that swelling shows up in the feet or ankles. In a fresh surgical patient, it floods the face. Pressure builds, bandages tighten, and the blood meant to heal the wounds can no longer circulate properly. And this is where the most disturbing rumors begin. According to unconfirmed accounts from sources close to production, when Darcey returned from one of these extreme overseas procedures, the reveal wasn't celebratory. It was horrifying. Normally, when bandages come off after surgery, the area is bruised and swollen, but it's pink. It's alive. What insiders claim is that Darcey's tissue wasn't turning pink at all. It was turning dusky, dark purple, and in some areas, black. Those are the earliest signs of necrosis, the death of tissue caused by a lack of blood flow. And once tissue dies, there is no miracle fix. You can't reverse it. You can't save it. The only option is debridement, cutting away dead flesh, leaving behind an open void where skin once existed. For someone whose identity and self-worth are deeply tied to her appearance, realizing that your nose may literally be dying on your face is a level of psychological torment most of us can't even imagine. So the question becomes unavoidable: why didn't she stop? Why didn't she rush to a top-tier U.S. hospital the moment things looked wrong? This is where the story takes a much darker turn, into the shadowy world of what insiders call the medical blacklist. For years, rumors have circulated that Darcey may be on a do-not-touch list among elite American plastic surgeons. These doctors talk. They attend the same conferences, share the same cases, and recognize the same warning signs. When a patient walks in with a nose that's been operated on 3, 4, even 5 times, and whose internal structure is already compromised, the risk becomes astronomical. Sources claim Darcey allegedly sought out revision specialists in New York and Beverly Hills, desperate to undo the oversnatched look. But the diagnosis she reportedly received was devastating: compromised vasculature. In simple terms, doctors allegedly told her that her nose was a house of cards. The blood supply was so damaged, so limited, that one more incision could mean total tissue death. Imagine sitting in a pristine consultation room, offering double or triple the standard fee, begging a surgeon to fix you, only to have them look you in the eye and say, "I can't touch you. If I operate, you will lose your nose permanently." That kind of rejection doesn't bring relief. It breeds desperation. It drives someone back toward risky clinics, back toward doctors who chase Instagram clout instead of patient safety, and straight back into the cycle of self-destruction. And all of this is allegedly happening while the cameras are rolling, or are they? Because what TLC may be seeing through the lens is no longer compelling television, it's a liability nightmare. We may be watching a medical catastrophe unfold in slow motion. But the physical damage is only part of the story. As Darcey's condition reportedly worsens, the corporate machinery behind the scenes is scrambling. Legal teams are rumored to be reviewing footage frame by frame, searching for signs of infection, swelling, or visible deterioration, anything that could justify shutting production down before disaster strikes. Because if Darcey Silva were to develop sepsis from a necrotic facial wound while filming a confessional, 90 Day Fiancé wouldn't just be a reality show anymore. It would be evidence. And that's a line no network wants to cross. This leads us straight into the darkest corner of the entertainment industry, the TLC liability crisis. For years, the network has thrived in a moral gray zone, filming heartbreak, divorces, meltdowns, and emotional collapse. But physical self-destruction is different. It terrifies corporate lawyers. This is where the concept of duty of care comes into play. At what point does filming a woman harming her own body become exploitation? At what point does keeping the cameras rolling turn a production company into an accomplice? Insiders say the conversations at network headquarters have fundamentally shifted. This is no longer about ratings or storylines. It's about risk management. There are whispers of a looming insurance nightmare behind the scenes. Every reality production is insured against accidents and injuries, but sources claim insurers are raising serious red flags. Some are allegedly threatening to pull coverage entirely or exclude Darcey from policies. Why? Because on paper, she represents a catastrophic risk. From an actuarial standpoint, she's no longer just a cast member, she's a walking liability. And if Darcey were to collapse on set from sepsis caused by a necrotic infection, or if an implant were to rupture and trigger toxic shock while cameras were still rolling, the fallout wouldn't stop at hospital bills. It would open the door to lawsuits worth millions, claims rooted in negligence, recklessness, and failure of care. And that reality may explain the eerie silence we've all noticed lately. Industry whispers, leaked emails, and hushed conversations point toward what insiders call a soft cancellation. Executives aren't going to publicly fire their most recognizable star. That would spark outrage. Instead, the alleged strategy is far quieter: pause filming under the cover of a mental health break, a scheduling issue, or creative restructuring. But the truth, if sources are to be believed, is far more disturbing. They're waiting. Waiting to see if her face recovers, or if it collapses completely. Production has effectively been put on ice because the network refuses to be holding a camera if the worst-case scenario unfolds. For the first time, they're easing off the gas, not out of compassion, but out of self-preservation. They're watching a slow-motion crash and stepping back just far enough to avoid being blamed. While executives worry about liability, Darcey remains trapped in a mental prison that may be even more dangerous than the surgeries themselves. We need to talk about body dysmorphia as a ticking time bomb. To casual viewers, her actions look like vanity. To psychologists, they resemble a severe, untreated mental health crisis. This is where the concept of the phantom flaw comes in. When Darcey looks in the mirror, she likely doesn't see the collapsing nasal bridge or the overfilled lips that the public sees. Her brain zeroes in on something microscopic, a tiny bump, a barely visible asymmetry, a wrinkle that only appears under harsh lighting. She becomes obsessed with this imagined defect while ignoring the very real structural damage happening around it. This isn't logic. It's delusion. And like any addiction, it escalates. Think of her surgical journey the way you'd think about substance abuse. The first major procedure delivered a high, the reveal, the compliments, the rush of transformation. It flooded her system with dopamine. But the high didn't last. It never does. Now, she's no longer chasing pleasure. She's chasing normalcy. She's trying to recreate that first feeling, that first reveal. But the law of diminishing returns has taken hold. Every new procedure delivers less satisfaction and causes more harm. She's running a race she can't win, and the finish line leads straight to a hospital bed. And yet, in this terrifying spiral, Darcey believes she isn't alone. She thinks she has a partner. A teammate. Which brings us to the most heartbreaking twist of all, the saboteur in the house. For years, Darcey and Stacey have branded themselves as inseparable, the Silva twins against the world. But if you watch closely, if you study the micro-expressions, the passive-aggressive comments, the subtle digs, a very different story begins to emerge. What we may be witnessing is a Shakespearean betrayal. A chilling theory is now circulating among insiders. Stacey isn't just a supportive sister. She's the enabler. And she may even be the architect of Darcey's downfall. Look at the footage. When Darcey emerges from surgery swollen, bruised, and visibly alarming, who is the first person to call her snatched? Who rushes in with, "You look amazing, Darcey"? It's Stacey. And that praise doesn't heal, it validates the dysmorphia. So we have to ask, is that support, or is it sabotage? Revisit the twin war. For 40 years, they've competed over everything: men, attention, fame, beauty. Now, rumors are surfacing that Stacey has been quietly seeing different doctors. While the twins travel together for overseas package deals, sources claim Stacey is privately consulting top-tier specialists for subtle corrective work, fixing her own problem areas while encouraging Darcey to keep pushing further. Preserving herself, while Darcey takes all the risk. Think about the endgame. If Darcey continues down this path and disfigures herself, while Stacey maintains or improves her appearance, Stacey wins. For the first time in their lives, she becomes the undisputed pretty twin. It's a psychological coup. By nudging Darcey toward just one more lift, one more tweak, and discouraging real intervention, she effectively eliminates her competition. There are even reports of a massive off-camera blowout, one TLC either missed or chose not to air. Sources say Darcey finally snapped. In a rare moment of clarity, amid pain and swelling, she allegedly accused Stacey of wanting her to look like a monster. She accused her own sister of feeding her insecurities to keep her small. It was raw, unscripted, and horrifying. In that moment, the curtain dropped, and the toxic dynamic was fully exposed. The rift is real, and it's dangerous. Because without Stacey, Darcey is alone. But with Stacey, she may be in even greater danger. She's cut off from reality, surrounded by yes-men and an enabler who may subconsciously want her to fail. So now we're left with a woman whose body is rejecting repeated trauma, a network quietly backing away to avoid a legal disaster, and a sister who may be pushing her closer to the edge. The walls are closing in from every direction. The necrosis isn't just a medical condition, it's the physical manifestation of the rot surrounding her life. The tissue is dying because the environment itself has become toxic. But the story doesn't end here, end with a fight or a lawsuit. It brings us to the most terrifying question of all: what does the future actually look like for Darcey Silva? If the rumors about darkened, dying tissue are true, we're long past the point where makeup or clever angles can hide the damage. We may be approaching a point of no return, one where the face she spent millions trying to perfect simply stops existing in any recognizable form. This is the edge of the cliff. There is no stepping back from here. For the first time, the three greatest threats in Darcey's life have collided head-on: medical necrosis, corporate abandonment, and familial betrayal. Together, they've formed a single, overwhelming existential crisis. If these reports are accurate and her facial tissue is truly compromised, this isn't just the end of a reality TV chapter. It's the end of the life she knows. Picture a future where cameras stop rolling not because the show was cancelled, but because the star can no longer bear to show her face. We may be staring down a real-life Phantom of the Opera scenario. If the necrosis spreads or the nasal structure fully collapses, Darcey could be forced into hiding. A world where she disappears behind medical masks, heavy veils, and digital avatars, existing only as a filtered, artificial version of herself online, while the real woman fades into isolation. For someone who has always lived in the spotlight, being pushed into the shadows by the very thing she chased for validation is a cruel irony. And that forces us to confront the hardest questions of all. Is Darcey Silva a victim of a predatory cosmetic industry that refuses to say no? Is she a casualty of a sister determined to win a 40-year rivalry at any cost? Or is she a prisoner of her own untreated dysmorphia, trapped in a cycle that no amount of surgery can ever fix? Most importantly, can she still be saved before the damage becomes irreversible? The window for reconstruction is closing fast. Ethical surgeons may be willing to help, but they cannot operate on someone who refuses to accept the reality of their condition. This is no longer a storyline. It's a developing medical emergency. The silence from the Silva camp is deafening, and in this industry, silence usually means lawyers and doctors are working around the clock. If the necrosis rumors are true, the next few months will determine everything. We are witnessing a human tragedy unfold in real time. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe TLC has a moral obligation to step in and force Darcey into treatment for surgical addiction before filming another season? Or should the network shut everything down immediately to save her life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We are actively tracking sources in Turkey and monitoring potential leaks from revision specialists in Beverly Hills. The moment we receive confirmation about her nasal reconstruction status, we will post an emergency update. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and stay with us, because you do not want to be the last to find out what happens next.